Well, you caught me pouring my coffee. Hello, everybody. Hopefully, my sound is okay. If I can get a check from some of you in the chat. Hopefully, my blue guard out there. It's nice to see everybody. There, welcome, Sandy, Autistic Shield, Robski. Yo, good to see you here, dude. Oh, Jared, nice to see you too. Charlie, hey. Oh, hey, Kim, how you doing? Well, let me tell you, you guys, this one has a lot. And this one, if the sound is good, we're going to get started with, oh boy. First, I got to give you a TLDR. I've been covering this case for well over 18 months, maybe, starting way back. There are 2 videos linked down below in the description that when you have more time, if you want to get the salacious details, the testimonies, and all of the Twitter happenings that happened when the accusations came out. Well, today we're going to be talking about Marilyn Manson, aka Brian Warner, in a hot mess of legal cases that I mean, there are just so many. There are 3 current cases against him, and he's filed his own also against someone else. There has been a dismissed case. Well, I think before we get started into all of those details, first, hello, Mrs. Cassandra. I'm glad to see you. And Kyle's Goldfish and Break Your Monkley. How and welcome. I may not be able to greet all of you as we go because this is a lot, but I assure you, for everyone listening and all of you in the chat, I'm really grateful that you're all here. This one, I think you're going to enjoy. Hey, Luke. All right. First, I'd like to give you a breakdown of the abuse allegations against Marilyn Manson. I'm going to call him Marilyn Manson because that's how you know him. Although in the legal courts, his name is Brian Warner. That's his legal name. So if you see documents, don't get confused. It's just going to be that way. Also, let me tell you now that there's a lot of things in this case that you're not going to like. There are things we don't like to talk about. There are things that may make you uncomfortable. So I'm going to give you a warning now to take care of yourselves, because you know me, I'm just going to say it how it is. That's how it is on this channel. So I'm going to give you a heads up that I'm going to use the real words. We're going to talk about sexual assault. We're going to talk about abuse and allegations, consent, non-consent, all of those sticky, wicky kind of things that we don't like to deal with. This case has it all, and this is why I'm covering it. There are issues here that go well into legal precedent and well into statutes that have to change. It's 2022, and I can't believe some of the crap that's still going on. But, I digress. Let me bring you up to date. Let's start with the abuse allegations against Marilyn Manson. Okay. After, way back when Evan Rachel Woods first publicly accused rock singer Marilyn Manson of sexual abuse way back in February of 2021. Similar allegations by others against the musician also surfaced at the same time. All right, these allegations go back all the way to Woods' testimony in 2018 to Congress, okay, where she alleged abuse by Marilyn Manson and named him as the abuser and why she was speaking out to Congress at that time to get Me Too kind of movement going in order to get legislation passed that actually helped victims of domestic violence get an easier TRO, get more compassionate interviews by law enforcement, help extend the life of rape kits that were taken, help extend and actually make it more human, the process of actually getting those samples taken and developing a whole team and process to make it more give you more dignity and help take some of the shame away about what had happened, make the process easier for a person to come forward. That all happened back in 2018 when that testimony happened. Okay. Manson denied any allegations at that time. Okay. And just to let you know, little caveat, he's currently suing Evan Rachel Woods. Okay. He just filed this year. So back February 27th of 2018, Evan Rachel Wood, a former fiancé of Marilyn Manson, who had dated him from 2006 to 2010, joined many other activists in testifying before the U.S. Congress during a hearing of the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security, and the investigations in Washington, D.C. And they were there to help promote the implementation of the 2016 Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights Act in all 50 states. Wood described horrific experiences of sexual assault and torture. She said she had suffered from a man that claimed to love her, as well as from another attacker. She did not identify the alleged abusers at that moment. Over a year before the hearing, Wood said she endured physical, psychological, and sexual abuse, also in a 2016 interview with Rolling Stone, later emailing a clarification to the magazine to assert that she had been raped by a significant other while they were together. Along comes April 23rd of 2019. Wood again testified, this time to the California Senate Public Safety Committee, to help pass the Phoenix Act, her own bill that extends the amount of time domestic violence survivors can press charges against their abusers in the state. The Phoenix Act is also the name of Wood's organization that advocates for abuse survivors, according to LinkedIn. The actress again described assault and torture she said she experienced in a relationship with a man, similarly leaving the alleged abuser's identity a secret. A year earlier, actress Charlene Yee, that's a Y-I, accused Manson of harassment, including his allegedly making sexual, abusive, and racially insensitive remarks towards her while they were working together. November 10th of 2020, Metal Hammer, a magazine, reported that Manson hung up the phone when it mentioned Wood's name to him in an interview. The musicians team issued a response the next day, maintaining that Manson's openness on the issue by pointing to his past comments regarding the Me Too movement in general and the abuse allegations against disgraced movie producer Harvey Weinstein, made by another of Manson's ex-fiancées, actress Rose McGowan. In particular, Wood publicly named, hold on one second. We go to February 1st of 2021. Wood publicly named Manson as her alleged abuser. That was the first time she said his name. Simultaneously, at least 4 other women came forward. Sarah McNeely, Ashley Morgan Smithline, also known as Ashley Lindsay Morgan, Ashley Walters, and a woman named Gabriella. They all joined Wood by each sharing their own separate accusations against the musician. A former personal assistant for Manson supported Wood's allegations, and the musician's record label and talent agent went forward and dropped him. Later that day, Manson refuted the accusations in a statement, which read, and I quote, "Obviously, my art and my life have long been magnets for controversy, but these recent claims about me are horrible, distortions of reality. My intimate relations have always been entirely consensual, with like-minded partners. Regardless of how and why others are now choosing to misrepresent the past, that is the truth." That was his quote. I can tell you that Twitter was full of accusations, quotes, tweets. Everyone did it publicly. If you look in the videos down below, you'll find all the tweets and all the Instagram posts from all of those posts that were made by the 4 women and many others during that whole week. As the allegations got attention during the 1st and 3rd of February, Manson lost a planned TV role, and a senator called for an investigation of him. Many previously associated with the musician began speaking out, including McGowan, 9 Inch Nails' Trent Reznor, Limp Bizkit's Wes Borland, Sharon Osbourne, Dita Von Teese, Manson's ex-wife, and a stylist who accused the singer of putting a gun to her head. All of these people came out not for Manson, but against. February 3rd, the Los Angeles Police Department conducted a wellness check on Manson at the behest of an unidentified partner. Police said Manson was safe at home, although he apparently declined to come outside to meet them. Heavy metal singer Otep Shemaiah accused Manson of abusing his current wife, Lindsay Osage, whom Manson married in 2020. Artist manager Tony Chiola, who worked with Manson for over 25 years, cut ties with Manson on February 5th of 2021. February 18th, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department had started an investigation. The allegations against Manson. The following week, another Manson accuser, Bianca Alain, said she would be speaking to the FBI about the musician. February 2021, actress Esme Bianco accused Manson of sexual abuse. She alleged instances of assault and torture at the hands of the musician. You may know Esme Bianco from Game of Thrones. April 2021, reports surfaced that Bianco had sued Manson for sexual assault. In response, Manson issued a statement through his lawyer claiming her accusations were provably false. That case is still active. May 5th, Smithline, Ashley Smithline, a model, one of Manson's accusers who joined Wood in publicly publicizing the allegations back in February, spoke to People magazine about her claims, and she claimed she survived a monster. Put it in print. May 7th, a report accused Manson and Osage of attempting to silence the creators of an Instagram account allegedly dedicated to publicizing claims of abuse against the musician. That account actually took comments, pictures, any accusations anybody made, and made little GIFs and little posts and just spread it everywhere through Instagram. And it was called Victims of Manson. May 18th, in 2021, Ashley Waters, one of Manson's accusers, who was also his ex-personal assistant, joined Wood in publicizing their allegations, filed a lawsuit against the musician for sexual assault and harassment. On May 25th, there was a report that stated that Manson had a warrant out for his arrest in New Hampshire, stemming from a 2019 incident in which the musician allegedly spat on a videographer during a performance there. According to the police in Guilford, New Hampshire, Manson faced 2 counts of simple misdemeanor assault. This just sat on the books because nobody cared to try to arrest him. It was kind of funny that they chose the middle of all these assault allegations to just, as this sheriff just decided to grab his 15 minutes of fame, come forward and say, oh, by the way, Manson spit on somebody during a concert and we should do something about that. Nothing ever became of it. He did have to go file charges, go in there and face the charges, file some kind of paperwork and pay the fine. And I do believe it was settled and nothing else is going to happen about it. Ginger, yes, it is the same assistant who was at Johnny's Thanksgiving. Yes, it is Ashley Walters. Yes, Miss Walters, I do believe that she was at Johnny's Thanksgiving dinner. June 28, 2021, Manson reportedly agreed to turn himself in, of course, to that mansion, like that warrant that I just said in New Hampshire. And everything was taken care of with the police department. They got their 15 minutes of fame, a couple of articles, and everything was done. But on June 30th of 2021, Smithline, Ashley Morgan Smithline, the model, sued the musician. In July of 2021, Manson's lawyer filed court documents trying to dismiss Bianco's suit. This is Esme Bianco from Game of Thrones. The attorney arguing that her and other accusers were desperately trying to conflate the imagery, that the artistry of Manson's shock rock stage persona with fabrication of accounts of abuse. They literally filed suit that said they were only suing him because of his flagrant rock style on stage, and that none of this could possibly be true, that he wasn't really like that. The court dismissed his motion to dismiss. It did not go through. Manson pleaded not guilty, of course, in New Hampshire about the spitting, paid the fine, and went away. Okay. He had also submitted another case that was put against him about a videographer who had also signed paperwork that said that possibly there would be fluid exposure because of, in his contracts, the way he got out of the New Hampshire case was because in the contracts for anyone that's going to videograph or do any kind of documentation of the actual concert, they actually have a clause in there that says you could get exposed to fluids. And that's just how he only got to pay a fine. In California, there was a lawsuit by an accuser who only came forward as Jane Doe. That lawsuit in September of 2021 was dismissed by a judge as to be the statute of limitations. However, Jane Doe has successfully refiled with additions as to why it took so long, and that case is still pending in court now. October 2021, the judge denied Manson's legal team the request to dismiss Bianco's case, stating she had valid cause. November 14th, 2021, Rolling Stone investigations uncovered many details related to the accusations against Manson, including claims of racism, manipulation, and false imprisonment. They ran a detailed article. November 19th, 2021, a lawyer for Manson mentioned the possibility of a blanket settlement for those suing the musician, referring to the refiled Jane Doe lawsuit and other cases that are somewhat related. The attorney said Manson's legal team may decide that it's best to have a global mediation instead of having all these separate suits. In November 21, the LA County Sheriff's Department executed a search warrant in a raid on a Los Angeles home belonging to Manson. The musician was evidently not home at the time of the search. It brings us to 2022. In January of 2022, Evan Rachel Woods premiered her documentary about her activism called Phoenix Rising, and it served as an expose on her allegations against Manson. In the movie, Woods says she was essentially raped on camera. When she co-starred alongside Manson in the music video of his 2007 song, Heart-Shaped Glasses. The music video begins with the scene of the pair, who were then dating, kissing and engaging in an act of theatrical sex, which was presumed to be stimulated. However, when the cameras were rolling, he started actually penetrating her, according to Wood, and this is an allegation, and she had never agreed to that. And that's where her lawsuit and her allegations came forward, although she has not actually filed any charges against Marilyn Manson to this date. However, in March, Manson sued Wood and her Phoenix Act director, Ilma Gore, for defamation, sharing the full text of the lawsuit that claims the two formed a conspiracy act against him. In an accompanying statement, the musician had said, and I quote, "There will come a time when I can share more about the events of the past year. Until then, I'm going to let the facts speak for themselves." It brings us to April. Marilyn Manson accuser, Game of Thrones actress Esme Bianco, asserts in a new court filing that the rock singer blocked the use of footage of her that was to be used during the Deftones current tour as part of their stage set. And this was all taken in April 28. She has amended her claims, still going forward against him. Okay. The motion expands on Bianco's March 2021 lawsuit that is accusing Manson of sexual assault. But in these new documents, she has now added the claim of torturous interference, which, under contract, can be something she can get him for without the statute of limitations. So that brings us up to date about the accusers. I'm going to look through the comments right now just to see if I can answer any questions before I go forward with the rest. That was a lot. I know, breathe, woman. I know, but it's a lot. And I want to get you up to date before we go forward. You can get a lot more of the information in the videos below. But, Let me just tell you this. This actually brings forward a lot in statute of limitations. Okay. One of the actual cases has been dismissed, unfortunately. The case against, and I say unfortunately because of the reason. Uh, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that this man is guilty. I don't want him to be tried in the media. He's got multiple cases against him. And they do seem credible, the stories, but they cover a long period of time. The one I'm going to tell you about first that got dismissed is the one of Ashley Walters, who was his personal assistant. She claims that it was a hostile work environment. She claims he made her work 48 hours a period of time. He declined her food, beverage, or even sleep during working for him, and that he often would ridicule her and offer his friends, associates, work associates, the ability to sexually assault her at will. She was forced to sit on people's laps, let people fondle her breasts, touch her ass, amongst other things. It was definitely a hostile work environment, according to her allegations and court documents. Problem is, it all happened in 2010 and 2011. That is well out of the statute of limitations for that state. And recently, a judge has decided that it would be dismissed because of the statute of limitations. Now, when they decided to do that, they do give them a few days to file an amendment. And in her amendment, when it came forward that Brian Warner filed a motion to dismiss based on statute limitations, which gave her the head up to file the amendment to her claim, which then actually she was able to put forward to the court the reason she waited so long. And the reason that she waited so long was that she felt terrorized by him, threatened by him. There was she supplied some statements and documentation, the best that she could, of threats that she received from him, that things he would do if she had anything to do with Evan Rachel Wood's Phoenix Rising project or the documentary, that he would take retaliatory legal aggression on her. Okay. And also, she had therapist notes saying that she had memory issues and that it took her a while to remember everything. She had regression. It had to be brought forward, and she was remembering things in pieces. And this was the reason for her delay in filing. But the court chose to disregard that and said it was not enough. And that's why I'm reporting on this. Because to me, that's a valid reason. Because if what happened to her, it was wrong. And if you don't remember or can deal with it for a while, you should have the grace to be able to at least take that person to court. Not to convict them in the media, not to slam them with some big organization by Me Too, but just to plead your case. Not to be told that your suffering doesn't matter because it didn't happen on the time frame that they like. That to me is untenable. That's definitely, to me, terribly untenable in this case. But that particular judge decided, I do believe that was Judge Stern there in the California court. Okay. Judge Michael Stern. He also decided that her statements of regression and having memory loss did not provide enough facts or evidence for them to go forward with the case based on statutory limitations. So they used both. The legal team for Walters said that her memories had been flooding back, and she met with other women who have alleged abuse by Manson, and she sought help from mental health professionals. She did everything she could, according to her complaint, obtained, through this article from Law and Crime. And they believed that her case could be under the new amendment in California law that expanded the statute of limitations to 10 years for abuse survivors who weren't aware that they were being abused at the time of the offense. Manson's attorneys, however, argued that Walters had been conscious of the alleged abuse while she was working for him more than a decade ago. So Judge Stern sided with Manson's attorneys, ruling earlier last week at the end of May that Walter's allegations were not applicable to the delayed discovery rule, and noting that she had failed to provide sufficient facts to support the use of that amendment in her case. And I just don't agree with that, because even though she may be aware at the time that she was in an untenable situation, she was not dealing with it, and she couldn't remember the details of it. She didn't have enough to come forward until she sought therapy and she could get the memories back. But I know you kind of agree with the judge, Kyle. A lot of people do. All of a sudden, she had memory regression, and only after the first time that her case was dismissed. Exactly. It would have went a lot better for her if they had put that all out front instead of in the middle, waiting for the case. So it does, I do agree with you, Kyle, that it does actually open up the window for them to say that perhaps, that was just a way to get the case extended. And I do agree that it should have been done ahead of time. If that had been going on all along, it should have been in the first pleading, and that way there wouldn't have been this at all. Listen, nobody really gets to choose how they process threats or abuse. The other issue was threats, Kyle and Kyle's Goldfish, and maybe they weren't claiming those right up out front, but if those threats were credible as they had documented, then they should have looked at that a little bit harder, because people do get threatened not to file charges or to go forward with things, and that could have been a very valid reason for the delay also, and perhaps maybe more weight could have been put on that. Okay. These lawyers are very disheartened, as well as Ashley. Ashley put a statement out earlier that week that I'd like to read for you. Nobody gets to choose exactly how they process abuse or threats. I'm disheartened in the court's decision today, not just for my case, but for the message it sends to other survivors out there trying to balance how they process abuse with arbitrary court deadlines. We will not let this hurdle stop us from shining a light on what happened to me and to others. Ashley's attorneys have, also said that they're disappointed by the ruling and the plan, because this case, she doesn't get to refile. This case was dismissed with prejudice, which means there'll be no refiling for any of the allegations that she listed in the document of the complaint. And she can't go forward with any of it. It's done for Ashley Walters. She'll have to deal with her justice through her therapy and just making herself whole. But she won't be able to go against Marilyn Manson on this at all. Brian Warner will not be put up on charges again with anything that happened to Ashley Walters that was documented in the original complaint. Yeah, exactly, Kyle. If it was all up front, which you and I both agree, Kyle's Goldfish, that it would be much simpler if people just put it all up front to begin with, and they wouldn't be dealing with all of this stuff about after the fact, and I get it, okay? Okay. Always Createful has a comment here. Even in the moment of any type of abuse, a person may dissociate from the abuse which is happening. For some, it can take years and even decades for details to surface. And that is a true and uncomfortable statement. And you're right, Mallory. Welcome. And it is sad. This is why I'm covering it, because there are a lot of things in this case that disturb me. When I get disturbed, I get vocal. When I get vocal, I usually get on a soapbox. So I apologize, everyone, but this one's going to be a while. There are 3 cases here, and I don't necessarily want to call Marilyn Manson guilty. I don't. But I want due process, and I want statute of limitations to be a little more flexible when it comes to abuse and people that have issues dealing with it. If they have valid issues and have been in therapy and can document it, what's the harm in letting them come forward and let due process happen? Who are we to say how someone deals with that? We're to say that someone gets away with it because it took too long for us to talk about it. Those are the questions I have. I do. It does seem, Kyle says it looks a little convenient that all of these regressed memories happened to return only after the case was dismissed. Still a shame she didn't get her day in court, but just the way. Well, actually, before it got dismissed, she did file about the regressions, but she didn't file them in the beginning and ask for the extended statute of limitations. Here's my point, is that if you know the time frame has expanded, and a good lawyer does when you're bringing a case for it, they should be building towards this amendment, especially in California, because the option is there for them to use. So the case should have been presented with the why built into the complaint as to why it took so long. A judge would have appreciated that. Okay, a judge would have appreciated the acknowledgement that they were outside the statute of limitations and they knew it. Not trying to pretend like they weren't, not trying to come up with a reason later as to why anything happened. You know, foresight often can avoid the defendant from coming forward with an argument against you. If you pre-plan ahead for it and gave the judge the information, it might have went another way. That's my point. I do agree, Kyle. In this particular case with her, I do want other survivors when I'm speaking of it, not necessarily that Ashley has done it the right way. Ashley Walters. I have to be careful with the last names because when it comes to lawsuits and Brian Warner, there's more than one Ashley. She was the third. She came forward almost last, the third in the. Let's see. She was one of the last to file suit, Kyle, but she was one in the original 3 that came out in that February in the onslaught of Instagram accusations. Because before they filed their lawsuits, there was an onslaught of social media allegations put out against Marilyn Manson. And that's what you'll see in my video down below. They came out en masse and put it all out for social media to see before they filed any lawsuits. The lawsuits came much later, okay, months later. Okay, that also I had a little bit of exception to. I don't like the way that was done, and I'm sure you all agree. That doesn't seem very, very kosher. That's the only word I can think of right now. You know, well, it's a difficult subject, and it's going to be one that's going to be quite back and forth. Even my friends who like legal will be going back and forth about this over and over. I'm sure with Kyle and Shay and several of you that like go and always creative, and several of you that go in and out of these cases all the time. Ginger, we're going to be going back about each one, whether their cases are credible. But what we really want to do is look at the statutes, actually, not so much the individuals right now. I'm looking at the whole thing and wondering if that amendment is there, how best to use it. I'm very happy California has it. Okay, it should be a little bit more, it shouldn't be so hard to prove, but I'm very, very happy that they have an ability that you can prove why you took so long to file something. Okay. Mallory's Asylum says they should stricken the law with abuse. It affects some for life, and if their abuser as an authority figure, it really complicates things. I feel for all the abuses out there. I do. You know what, Mallory? That is something that I like to address as far as this also. That here in this particular case, in all the cases with Marilyn Manson, what we have is an imbalance of power. And when we have an imbalance of power, issues of actual consent and actual control come up. And I know people don't like to talk about that. And that's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of you. And I apologize. But it is going to be something I address as I talk about every single one of these cases. Because that imbalance in power does exist there. That is also a reason that some of these victims may not have been filing or pressing charges or speaking out in the beginning, because they had to deal with all of that. Why they perhaps felt they let something happen to themselves that they did not agree with later. I'm not saying that it's just a matter of when you can actually give a complete consent or not. I don't, Aaron, this is a sticky wicket. Hold on, let me find this on the other side so I could put it up. It's beginning to look like there's grounds to create a class action laws for sexual abuse and rape. All right, you're not going to like these, but I'm against class action lawsuits of that nature. I think that sexual abuse and rape are individual. And even though it does appear that a pattern, when you go back and you look at my first and second videos, it does look like a pattern was there based on the women's stories. But remember, we only have their stories. We haven't seen any evidence to document their stories. We can't even say there's a pattern there yet. But it does appear to be. They were all younger. They were all groomed to look and be a certain way, and all of their stories involved the same type of situations, the same type of play, the same type of pushing towards sexual preferences. They tell stories of being denied food and water, being locked away, being kept up without sleep for hours on end, the same as Ashley Walters, his assistant. But the thing with Ashley Walters, the assistant, she did not claim the same situation as his actual partners did. All of these women that are filing against him were in a relationship with him. They were in an intimate, ongoing relationship with him when this happened. Well, Ashley Walters was his personal assistant and not in an intimate relationship with him. Her abuse allegations are more about the work environment and just abuse against a person, and also with how he presented her to his friends and allowed sexual harassment and abuse to happen. Yes, Anike, it is a sad case. I'm sorry. I did put a warning up before. I'll tell you all again. It's a rough one. You know. It is definitely a very rough one. It's Monkley, yes and no. I don't think that Marilyn Manson's being Amber Heard yet. I do think that something similar is happening to him back in February. What happened to him on social media was very similar to what happened to Johnny Depp. I will agree with you there, that they all came out at once, put out all of these claims at once, out on social media, not through the law, not any way like that, just made like a mass reporting of it out there, kind of like a campaign, okay? So that part I would say is similar, but the rest, no. I don't think you're going to find that any of these women beat up Marilyn Manson. I don't think there's going to be tapes coming forward of them talking to him the way that Amber Heard talked to Johnny. But as far as the media onslaught, you are spot on. It is like that. But I wouldn't call that a Amber Heard. I would call that a Rupert. Okay? Marilyn Manson's getting Rupert by a class of people just like Johnny Depp did. Okay. Shay says, from the documentary, Evan Rachel Wood said it was extended to 3 to 5 years, and they may have changed afterwards. I will check, though. Yeah, California is saying 10. That was the documentation. That article was written the very end of May, Shay. So I'm hoping that you do find that. If you do find that law, could you send me the president law? That would be great. I know you're a wonderful researcher. Just so that I could list the actual appendage when it happened. But when she was working on it, remember that when she was working on Phoenix Rising, and that's years, she's taking years to put this out. Okay, so when she finally puts it out, stuff's in there, it could have changed. It could have changed right away. Everything came out in January, but she had been working on it the whole year before, so they could have extended it. Okay. Or the writer of the article got it wrong. I mean, it could go either way. Now, I'm not going to say either one because I haven't seen the statute myself. Kyle's Goldfish says, isn't he alleged to have filmed a lot of his alleged abuse over the years and kept them for blackmail purposes, and then when this kicked off, destroyed it all? That is a rumor that it's destroyed. There's also a rumor that it's not destroyed because he wouldn't destroy his personal collection. There's also rumors that he shared certain pieces of it. Certain people that he performed with have come out and said they saw things. Okay, there are people that backed away from him, like the guy from 9 Inch Nails who said he saw stuff going on that he was not happy with and he backed away. People came out and said they did see things that were going on. Okay. Whether or not they'll be in court to testify to that. Remember, this is all in social media right now, not in a court. These statements that were made all over social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, in articles for Rolling Stone and Huffington Post and all of these other articles, they're not in a court of law yet. They haven't been provided as evidence. Right. It's 10 years, and if it's a minor, until their 40th birthday. Thank you, Shay. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so the one thing I want to tell you guys is I'm going to keep these to an hour because they are rough, okay? And I apologize. And I apologize for my tone and for not breathing. But this is important to me, and you'll hear it. You'll hear it sometimes, But you should, because shit like this, if it don't affect you, well, I don't know. It does affect me. I don't know what to think if it doesn't affect you. When you start reading this stuff, the reason I waited so long to get back into Manson is because when I made those first two videos, it took me months to get over it. The reading of all those statements, the delving into all of the stuff that they said happened, kind of flipped me out a little bit, And it doesn't mean I believe them, because it's hard for me to say that I actually believe them without seeing any evidence, because I want to stick to the legal part of it and cover the legal part really unbiased as I can. Okay. But it's hard stuff to read. It's hard stuff to digest. I'm a visual, creative person. These things affect me. So I do have a stance on it as far as statutes. I do have a strong stance about consent and whether, when there's imbalance of power, there's ever true consent to anything new and untoward that you may get into. But these were all adults, because nothing physical happened to anyone until they were over the age of 18, although there are claims by many that grooming started well before. Grooming techniques as in just, hi, I'm the famous Marilyn Manson, and I'm really a nice guy. Want to talk? Not anything sexual, not anything, like that. But you know what I mean by grooming, right? Making them comfortable, making them feel special because the rock star wants to have something to do with them. But, that's just personal opinion, as you know, just a bear, no legal. I'm not a lawyer, not a paralegal, not even a journalist or anything like that. I got a love of language and strong opinions. And I hope you'll listen to the rest of this with me. I'm going to cover this again this week, probably Wednesday. We'll get into the actual cases that are still open, give you just a brief synopsis, and then go into the case that Brian Warner, Marilyn Manson, has filed against Evan Rachel Wood. And you're going to not like it, because this is messy, messy, messy. Okay? And I have to say right here and now, that you're going to hear me say that Marilyn Manson has a case. He's got a case against her. Yes, he does. There's truth to it. I read it, and it is plausible. It's not that hard to imagine what he says happened. Just like it's not that hard to imagine what these women claiming abuse happened. It's going to get really very messy. Yes, Shay, very, very messy. Evan Rachel Wood is an actual star in her own right. She's a movie. So was Rose McGowan that dated him. He was with a lot of famous people. Esme Bianco is from Game of Thrones. Okay. But you have to admit, when Evan Rachel Wood hooked up with him, she was not. Neither was Rose McGowan. She wasn't. She says she doesn't feel she was at the head of his career. You know, he started talking to Rose when she was younger. Evan too. I'm not familiar with the band Headley. It is very difficult, Robsky, I'll agree, to disconnect from the details revealed if you immerse yourself in them. But, I'm going to do my best because it needs to be done. I mean, I'll take a vacation afterwards. It's very messy. Okay, so just about what we talked about already, not the other things that I want to go into later, like the case against Evan Rachel Woods or the detailed case about Jane Doe. I can just give you a little preliminary about those. I have face sheets. I'll tell you, just to tell you what we're going to be going into, I'll tell you what the cases for them involve. Okay. Jane Doe is putting forward a claim against Brian Warner for sexual assault, interference with the exercise of civil rights in violation of the Bain Act, sexual battery in violation of California Civil Code, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, the Bain Act has to do with the employment and environment. Okay, that's the same thing that Walters was claiming. Okay. Let me get the other one here. Now, Marilyn is filing against Evan Rachel Woods for intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation per se, violation of the Comprehensive Computer Data and Access Fraud Act, and impersonation over the internet. That's his claims against Evan Rachel. Okay. Let me just find Smith. Where did I put it? Hold on 1 second. I never thought I would have like 7 Manson files with data in them. They're all different because of the cases. Now, there's no cover sheet for Smith Klein, which is why it's going to take a little longer to go. Well, she's definitely suing him and and his record company. And the acts all come down. Gosh, it's 18 pages of stuff. Oh, trafficking victims, sexual trafficking, sexual assault and sexual battery against the violations of the Bain Act, intentional infliction of emotional distress, unlawful imprisonment. Okay. Now, when it comes to the Bain Act, the Bain Act is about sexual discrimination and harassment in the environment. Okay. Her particular claim for the Bain Act is about using Nazi paraphernalia to scar her, bandishing all kinds of swastika symbols on her against her will, calling her a dirty Jew or a kike. Things like that. Words we shouldn't hear. But they involve that is for her with the Bain Act there. It's what they would call that is an unsafe work environment that involves any kind of harassment or prejudice of any nature. You can send it, Shay. I'm happy to hear it, the full interview, if you'd like. I'll use that for Wednesday. Okay, so on that, you can ask any questions you'd like right now for the next couple of minutes. I'm not going to go into any more detail about the cases until Wednesday, and I'll give you another hour actually going into the detail of each one. And then again on Monday. It's probably going to take 3 to cover all of them, because Manson's case alone against Evan Rachel's Wood will probably take a whole hour. I don't know, but I want to tell you about the other cases. And 9 minutes is just not going to be enough, you know. Okay. Kyle says, I think he needs to knock off the international infliction of emotional distress. The rest, fine. But I doubt a jury is going to like the emotional distress claim. I agree. Manson claiming emotional distress is going to be rough, isn't it? I mean, but you want to, we have to also, yeah, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to read you something. There's an article that I just read this morning, and I put it aside. It's done by what's his name? Taylor Linzinomini, and he did it in April, and it's called We Can't Afford to Separate Art from the Artist. Because there's an argument going around right now about whether we judge Brian Warner as Brian Warner or Brian Warner as Marilyn Manson. Like, is he going to be tried in the public opinion because he's Marilyn Manson, because of his rock star kind of crazy persona? And so I'm going to just, if you'll give me the grace, I'm just going to read this out to you because it kind of struck me. Okay? And it comes with a warning. It says, I encourage you to practice self-care when choosing to read an article written. The following piece includes mentions of sexual abuse, victim blaming, grooming, rape, and torture. If this article causes anything to come up for you about your own experience or experiences, please know resources are available, and you can visit the National Domestic Violence Hotline website at www.thehotline.org. Also, for all of you, anyone out there on YouTube, anybody listening, anybody in the chat, those resource numbers are always linked in these videos of mine below, and they are there right now if you need them, or if you want to share them with anyone that you feel may need them. That will continue anytime these subjects come up. The question of whether or not we should separate the art from the artist has been floating around the music scene for ages. Anytime a new problematic soundbite or video clip of a performer surfaces, comment sections are flooded with calls to cancel them, or, on the contrary, to excuse the behavior simply based on the nature of their profession. But think about it. Regardless of how great their lesson plans were, would you trust your kid's school teacher if they were accused of sexual misconduct with minors? No, you wouldn't. You want to put them in a position of power with access to impressionable young people? There are many reasons why an artist might get canceled, but I'm not talking about someone simply spouting a stupid comment via their social media or in this article. I'm talking about people who have done real, tangible harm to others. While I believe many people have the ability to learn from their mistakes and redeem themselves, I also believe not everyone deserves fame or a platform, especially if they are potentially dangerous to society. Thus, I believe it's high time we all stop separating the art from the artist. This is a discussion of accusations against artists throughout the years. So hold on to your shorts, people. The list of musicians who have done legitimately harmful things or have legitimately bad views is unfortunately endless. You have people such as Iced Earth's John Schaefer, who participated in storming the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, as well as people such as Ted Nugent, who has made more headlines for his extreme right-wing views over the years than for his actual music career. There's also Marilyn Manson, who has been accused of grooming, abuse, rape, and torture. In addition, there seems to be a plethora of musicians who have been accused of inappropriate behavior towards minors, especially young fans. Brand New's Jesse Lacey and former Pierce the Veil drummer Mike Fuentes have been accused of sexual misconduct against minors. This isn't a new phenomenon either. Did we all forget that Elvis Presley was 24 when he met and started a relationship with a 14-year-old Priscilla Anvil? She reportedly wasn't the only teen Elvis was involved with. or that Chuck Berry was convicted sex offender, having spent 2 years in prison after taking a 14-year-old girl over state lines for immoral purposes when he was about 33 years old? And what about Jimmy Page, who also started an inappropriate relationship with a 14-year-old girl, and Jerry Lee Lewis, who married his 13-year-old cousin? I could go on, but I think you get the idea. People refer to Presley as the king, when really they should refer to him as what he truly was, a sexual predator. Students learn about Chuck Berry, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Jimmy Page in the history of rock and roll. These classes throughout the country without even hearing about their sexual misconduct. At most, their transgressions are minor footnotes. These musicians are idolized, while their victims are vilified, or worse, erased from history altogether. Disclaimer, and this is from the writer of the article. I am not perfect. I used to be obsessed with problematic rockers, including Elvis, but now I hear their music and can't help but think about the pain and trauma they've inflicted on others. I will also add that these views are my own and do not reflect the views of Loudwire, which was where I found the article, as a whole. If they make good music, who cares? This is a lazy argument, at best. By not holding abusers accountable, it perpetrates the idea that any abusive artist, actor, or musician can do whatever they want in their free time without any major consequence to their career. It allows performers to feel comfortable being abusive, finding solace in the fact that they know damn well people will still buy tickets to their concerts or download their latest album if it's good enough. This current system of separating the art from the artist allows abusers to both hold and abuse their power at will. Even if you don't agree with the way an artist conducts themselves in their private lives, but still support their professional career, you're part of the problem. However, inadvertently, it may be you are helping fund this person's life and possibly their abusive actions. By purchasing these concert tickets and streaming their music, you're helping them. It isn't enough to say that you only support their music, not their actions. By nature of their chosen careers, these musicians' lives are deeply intertwined with their personal lives. Their fame gives them privilege, and the money you give them grants them power in our society. The 15 minutes of fame misconception. Some may argue that survivors cry rape in an effort to get their 15 minutes of fame. But let's take a real look at the mountains of survivors have to climb when they report or share an instance of interpersonal violence, mainly victim blaming. The Center for Relationship Abuse Awareness provides this definition of that phenomenon. And I quote, "Victim blaming attitudes marginalize the victim survivor and make it harder to come forward and report abuse. If the survivor knows that you or society blames them for the abuse, they will not feel safe or comfortable coming forward and talking to you." End quote. Victim blaming places the blame on the survivor rather than the abuser. Examples sound like, you shouldn't have warned, you shouldn't have said, you shouldn't have done. And that if you didn't want it to be abused, it shouldn't have been there. Rape and sexual assault are two of the most underreported crimes in our society. Why? Maybe because only about 6% of rapists will ever spend a day in jail? And that to the fact that survivors often have to deal with feelings of shame, fear of retaliation, guilt, and avoidance. It's not hard to understand why someone wouldn't want to disclose an act of violence against them, and why it makes it so hard for some to do so. In addition, the FBI estimates that around 2% of reported rapes at most are false. Only 2%. The only instance I can come up with someone legitimately being falsely accused of sexual misconduct is Bright Eyes Connor Oberst. But even Oberst himself has said his story should not be used as an example of women crying rape. In an interview with Noisy, he says, "I don't ever want to minimize how much that happens to women all the fucking time. They say 1 in 4 women will experience some kind of a sexual assault in their life, which is really insane and heartbreaking. So as painful and surreal and fucked up as his own situation was, he didn't ever want to use it as an example to justify anything. He said don't use him as an example, even though his accuser lied." In conclusion, the author states, "One question that I don't believe has an easy answer is this. What about the bandmates? On one side, it's hard to discern how liable a person is for their bandmates' actions. On the other hand, how could they not know what was going on? These people have a work relationship unlike someone who goes into an office every day and they work in a cubicle. These people spend virtually every moment together while touring and recording. So how could they not be aware of what is going on in each other's personal lives? But still, we can't prove that they did. And monetization affects everyone in the band, not just the individual transgressor. While there isn't an easy answer, it is something I implore everyone to look into. I believe that holding the artists accountable for their actions will encourage all musicians and artists to do better. If someone realizes their career, their mansion, and their fancy car could be at stake if they participate in harmful behavior, they might just get the incentive to not be an asshole. It should be like that. But unfortunately, years of separating the art from the artist has conditioned musicians to see themselves as gods, unrestrained by morality. We could all do better, including myself, including you." And again, that was from Loudwire in the Taylor Lynn Zemeni from April 14th of this year. And I read it because I could have wrote it. I felt it. Felt every word. For those of you that joined late, I'm just about wrapping up. I'm going to do more on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We'll go over the individual cases. But again, I am not saying that Marilyn Manson is guilty. Even reading that article, I am bringing forward questions of what's going on and things that need to happen legally in our states, statutes that need to be changed, attitudes that need to be cultivated in a more kinder way for everyone, especially the victims, so that things like what happened with Amber Heard don't happen, for things like the massive assault on social media that happened to Marilyn Manson don't happen. So victims don't feel like that's how they should do things, okay? To get their voice heard. But anyway, on that, I'm going to say goodnight. Mipit, hello to those of you that came on. Hey, Mocking, how are you? And to the rest of you, I'm going to just take a breath now, Charlie. I'm breathing. Don't worry. I'm going to definitely just take a little bit of a break and I'll continue with this. And if you'll join me on Wednesday at 7. On that, y'all have a good night. Listen to this great outro by Counter Talk. And I'll see you when I see you. I agree, Monkley. I agree. Until the evidence is seen, there's no way we can say either way. And I'm not convicting the man until he gets to court, okay? I just want to provide the opportunity that he gets to court, and let them have their say. Yeah, Mocking, I hear you. It was. Hopefully I'll see you on Wednesday, Kyle. I'm so glad that you stayed up and you're here. And to those of you that did, thank you. And I'll see you soon. Bear out.